best comedy of the year. Hey everybody, and thanks for clicking on this video and checking out my channel. So last night I went out and I checked out the newest film in theaters, It Chapter 2. Directed once again by Andy Muschietti, and starring James McAvoy, Jessica Chastain, Bill Hader, Isaiah Mustafa, James Ranson, Jay Ryan, Andy Bean, and Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise the Dancing Clown once again. It's 27 years later and it has returned. The Losers Club must reunite once again to kill Pennywise once and for all before he can rain terror on the town of Derry once again. So if you watched my review for the first It movie directed by Andy Muschietti, then you know that I love that movie. And for completely different reasons, I love this movie too. But first, let's start off with what's really great about this movie, and that's this ensemble of adult actors as the cast of The Losers Club. Everyone said it, and I'm going to echo exactly what they say. The cast in here is superb. It's almost pitch perfect. Everyone feels like they capture the spirit and charm and what made the characters of the kids in the first film so special. They bring into these adult versions of the kids, and every single actor across the board I thought did a phenomenal job. And the casting department really did a really good job of the lookalikes. The one that impressed me the most was definitely Bill Hader as Richie. He felt very true to how that character could have grown up, as well as Andy Bean as Stanley. I mean, he was spitting image of what the kid actor looked like. It was crazy. But I thought all the adult actors did a really great job of portraying the kids grown up. The ones that get kind of pushed into the background are Jessica Chastain and Jay Ryan as Beverly and Ben. They got the least amount of screen time and the least things to do, I feel, in this movie. But I feel like the standouts of the movie were definitely Bill Hader as Richie, James Ranson as Eddie, and Isaiah Mustafa as Mike. I thought all those guys were the ones that really stood out amongst the ensemble of adult actors portraying the kids now grown up. As well as James McAvoy. I thought James McAvoy did a really good job of portraying Bill all grown up as well. When the losers get back to Derry and the fear starts to happen again, Bill kind of reverts back to his stutter that the character had in the first film. And I thought James McAvoy did a really good job of pulling off that stutter almost as well as Jaden Lieberher did in the first film. Along with our ensemble of adult actors, we got the kids returning in flashback scenes. And while it's really great to see the kids in the flashback scenes, a lot of those flashback scenes didn't really feel like they were necessary to me. Didn't really feel like they would have fit in the first It Chapter 1, which is where they're supposed to be taking place. They're supposed to be filling in gaps of scenes that we missed in It Chapter 1 that I didn't really feel like they were gaps that needed to be filled. And also, I just didn't feel like those flashback scenes added anything to the movie. I didn't feel like they really impacted the story of It Chapter 2 all that much. And because some time has passed and the kids have gotten older, they had to de-age them to make them look like they did in It Chapter 1, and that made for some modifications to the faces and to the vocal cords of the actors. And the ones that I noticed the most was definitely Richie and Ben. Richie was the one that you could tell was kind of altered the most. His voice didn't sound exactly the same as in the first film. And Ben just looked like he was just a little bit older than he was in the first film. They did a really good job of de-aging him and getting the chubby cheeks back, but he did look like he had grown a little bit since the first film. Everyone else I thought looked really good. Beverly, Eddie, Stanley, Bill. I thought they all looked really good with the de-aging, and they were the ones that I couldn't really tell. I was like, they could have shot this during It Chapter 1, and I wouldn't have noticed. But with Richie and Ben, I noticed a bit there. And with all that kind of said, that kind of brings me to the mixed feelings I have about It Chapter 2. Because I thought a lot of the decisions in this movie were very weird. So a large majority of this movie relates to those flashbacks I just talked about. A lot of this movie is the kids returning as adults to Derry. Then, without giving too much away, they have to go off on their own to basically uncover their flashbacks, because when you leave Derry, I guess one of its powers is that you don't remember anything. When you leave Derry, you don't remember the events of what happened that involved Pennywise. So they have to go out on their own and kind of like unlock these memories inside their heads, and that leads to the flashbacks. But it really led to a really sloppy narrative. I didn't really feel like the narrative for this movie was all that strong. It didn't really do anything compelling with the story. And this movie's almost 3 hours long. This movie's like 2 hours, 49 minutes long. And a lot of that is because of how many flashbacks are incorporated into this movie. And I just didn't feel like the flashbacks were all that necessary to the story of this movie. Like I've mentioned before in my first It review, I have not read the book. I have no idea what's in the book, what's not in the book, if this is the accurate translation of the book. But as far as the movie goes and what I watched, I just didn't feel like the story this time around was all that compelling for these adult actors. Going along with the weird decisions and the running time, without giving too much away again, there is a character from the first movie that this film decides to bring back. And this part I do understand is in the book, and I watched the 3-hour miniseries, so I understand that this part was in that as well. But in this movie, completely unnecessary. This character that they brought back added nothing to the story, virtually did nothing, impacted no one. If you cut this character out, you wouldn't have missed anything. This character did not need to be in the movie, and I am baffled that they brought this character back and did like nothing with it. It just wasted time. But let's talk about Bill Skarsgård as this clown Pennywise. Once again, Bill Skarsgård in this movie, he's really good. He's great as Pennywise. He gets some creepy moments. There's a scene that's in the trailer with the girl and Pennywise that in the movie, it almost rivaled the Georgie scene for me. It was really creepy. I love the way that Bill Skarsgård played it and lured this kid in. It was a really good example of how this clown was able to entice kids and bring them in and sort of manipulate their emotions. But I honestly didn't feel like Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise got a very memorable scene in this movie. Like, there was no scene in this movie that I felt was as memorable as anything he did in the first It. The Georgie scene in the drain, the haunted house scene where he comes out of the fridge, like all those kind of scenes that stick in your head. There was nothing like that in this movie with Pennywise for me that really like stuck with me. And going off of the Pennywise thing, this movie was heavily promoted as being like scarier than the first, and like it was just gonna be like one of the scariest movies ever made. I have no idea where that came from. I don't know if that was early on and they changed their minds, because this movie, in my opinion, is a comedy. This movie was baffling to me. As I was watching it, I was trying to figure this movie out. I had no idea what was going on. In the first film, I felt like they did a really good job of juggling and balancing the horror with the comedy. A lot of the comedy from that first film came from the characters and their reactions to Pennywise and the horrific scenes that they were experiencing, because they were kids and the way that kids see things is differently, and that's kind of where the comedy mixed with the horror for me. In this movie, I don't know if they were going for the same thing, if they were trying to mix the horror with the comedy, but at one point it honestly felt like Andy Muschietti was like, forget it, I don't want to make a horror movie anymore, let's make a comedy. Because this movie, oh my gosh, this movie makes some really baffling decisions with the horrific scenes. Don't get me wrong, they do have some creepy imagery in this movie. There is a couple creepy scenes. There were two scenes in particular that made me jump. One of them was in the trailer with the old woman. The way that scene plays out went in a way I was not expecting, and it made me jump. And there was a couple other scenes that felt eerie and kind of creepy, but it felt like whenever this movie had the chance to go horror or comedy, it chose comedy every time. This movie had me laughing the most I've ever laughed in a movie this year. It was baffling to me. To give you an example of this without giving too much away, in the first film, because Eddie is a germaphobe, he's kind of haunted by this leopard character. In this movie, the leopard character makes a reappearance, and there's a scene where he spits goo into Eddie's face, and they decide to play a love song over it. They put a love song over the scene where this thing shoots goo. Why? Why was that decision made? It was hysterical. It had me laughing my head off. There were so many moments in this movie where I was like, why did you make that decision? Why was that chosen? This is hilarious. It didn't take anything seriously. This movie is so schlocky and silly. It's not scary at all. There were two scenes that made me jump. This movie has very little scares in it. This movie is a full-on dark comedy, in my opinion. I was laughing so much in this movie, laughing harder than any other movie I've seen. I don't know if that was an intentional decision or if the fun that they were having on set just translated too much into the movie, but oh my goodness, there's some stuff I want to get into about this movie. But like I said, this movie is 3 hours long, and it has been heavily promoted as the one that ends it all. This is the final confrontation between Pennywise and the Losers Club. It ends, is what the marketing kept saying. And the way that this movie ended, I mean, this movie has an ending that just made me sit there and go, 3 hours? We waited 3 hours for that? I won't give it away, I won't get too much into it, but the way that this movie ends was nowhere near as satisfying as the way the first movie ended. It baffled me. I sat there with my mouth hanging open. I couldn't believe what was happening. It was just, it was so anticlimactic. Andy Muschietti's directing here was probably better than it was in the first movie. There's some really stylistic shots that I thought were really, really great. It's just a really mixed bag for me because there's so many decisions and stuff that they do in this movie that I can't get into in this non-spoiler review that just made me go, why? Why did you do that? What was the point of that? They do things with characters that go nowhere. There are things that they allude to and talk about that go nowhere. I mean, to sum up this movie, I would say that it has a really stellar cast with really good performances in it. It's got a couple creepy moments, a couple good scenes that build in the suspense, but for the most part, the narrative of this one I found very sloppy, very messy. Tonally, I felt the movie was just all over the place. There were a lot of weird decisions made in this movie that I just didn't understand, and it just felt like this movie wanted to do and focus on so much and so many ideas that in the end, it doesn't really do all that much, and it feels very unfocused. But oh my goodness, is it entertaining. I love this movie for completely different reasons than I love the first movie. I mean, I want to see this again. I gotta see this again. Guys, if you're looking for a horror movie, I don't recommend It Chapter 2 as a horror movie. As far as a companion piece to It Chapter 1 and the ending of It Chapter 1, I feel like it could be very disappointing. It was very, I don't want to say unsatisfying, but it felt very anticlimactic to me about what they decided to do with the story and how they ended this story. But I'm not going to lie to you, this movie is a lot of fun. It's very entertaining. And I just think that if you go in with the mindset of looking for a horror movie, you might leave disappointed. But if you go into the mindset just looking to be entertained and have a lot of fun with a group of friends, I definitely recommend go checking out this movie. Anyway, guys, those are all my thoughts and opinions on It Chapter 2. But what did you think about It Chapter 2? Did you find it legitimately scary, or did you find it a comedy like I did? Comment down below, let me know. I want to know all your thoughts and opinions about this movie. And guys, thanks again for clicking on this video and checking out my channel. As always, my name's Zachary Milne. Thank you for talking movies with me, and hope you have yourself a great day. Oh, this movie.